I'm on my first long distance moto camping off-road riding trip on my Tenere 700. And there are some things that have came up that I'm gonna cover. The good, the bad, and the ugly. Hey, how's it going? Welcome to my channel. I am currently located on section 1 of the Arizona BDR, and this fence line that you see here is the Arizona-Mexico border. I really find it enjoyable to ride along the border. I don't know why, but it's something that I have done and I really like. So I thought this would be a great place to film today, to talk about my experience on my very first long distance trip on my Tenere 700. Now, there are some good things, there are some bad things, and there are some things that I find to be a bit ugly, and I'm not sure how to address those. So I'm gonna jump in with the good thing. The good things that I have found with this bike so far is it is incredibly comfortable to ride. At the end of this trip, I'll have approximately 2,000 miles on it in about 6 days. So I'm doing 300 plus mile days, which it's not a terrible amount of mileage, but quite a bit of that is turned out to be off-road, which is piling up hours. So I'm spending anywhere from 7 to 9 hours a day on the bike, in the saddle, standing, sitting down, the whole deal. And this bike is really pretty comfortable. Ergonomically, I've only made a couple of changes. I put some extensions on the windscreen to get it up, so at highway speeds the wind is over the top of my head, and I did put a factory low seat, so it's a little bit easier for me to touch. That's the only changes that I have made ergonomically to this bike, and it is extremely comfortable. Now, the other thing that I have found that I wasn't really expecting is just how easy this thing is to ride. Highway, on-road, off-road, especially the off-road. Now, I had, right after I bought this bike, had made some comments that it was kind of meh. It wasn't really all that inspiring to ride. And now that I have been riding, I don't know, I've got 200 plus miles of off-road riding or dirt road riding in southern Arizona, I have really found it to be a lot of fun and very easy, especially when I'm doing a lot of ride-by shots. I can flip this bike around really, really easy. And I wasn't exactly expecting that because it is a heavier bike. I'm fully loaded, but I really find like I have quite a bit of control over this bike. I also have been riding it like I ride my 390, which is keeping the RPMs at 4,500 or higher. I don't go down below that, which gives this a lot of throttle response and makes it very, very fun to ride. So from a good standpoint, I've really, really enjoyed riding this. It has been a lot easier to ride off-road. I have ridden in some deeper sand. I have ridden in some rocky stuff, some deep gravel. All of it has been much easier than I expected. So that is a very, very good thing about this bike. Another good thing about this bike is the way it handles wind. Riding out west, it is inevitable, especially in the shoulder seasons, that it is going to be windy. And I have found that the weight of this bike has been perfect. I have not gotten blown around from buffeting from trucks or from crosswinds. It holds its line really, really well, which is not something I was expecting. I thought I would get blown around a little bit more than I have. But after riding smaller bikes and getting blown all over the place, that has not happened on this. Also, when I've been in a headwind, this has plenty of power to run whatever speed I want. On a smaller bike, I have not had that experience. So a good thing is the way this handles wind. All right, some of the bad things about this bike that I expected and I knew going into it was the suspension is very soggy. And I haven't had any hard bottoming, but I'm not riding all that hard. I'm by myself out here and I don't want anything bad to happen. But I do feel I'm going through a lot of that suspension in areas that I don't think I necessarily should. That's known. I think any research that you do, you'll see that. And I think this just confirmed that I've got to do something with it. Probably just springs for me. I'm trying not to spend a lot of money on this bike upgrading to crazy suspensions. I think springs will do it just fine for my style of riding. The other thing that I have found to be bad is I really miss having cruise control when I'm doing hundreds of miles of very straight highway riding where you can see the road as far as the eye can see, and it is straight just with some ups and downs. I do have a throttle lock and it helps, but it's just not as good as electronic cruise control. Being back out west, I really, really miss that. And that is a bad thing about this bike. I think if they had put throttle by wire on this, it would have been easy to adapt a cruise control. There are some options. MC Cruise has a cruise control for this, but it's like $700-800, which I can tolerate a lot of just straight roads with a throttle lock before I'm going to spend that kind of money. So that is one of the things that I find to be bad. Other than that, I really can't find anything else that I would say has been bad other than those couple of items. All right, now the ugly part of this bike that I wasn't sure how much of a problem it was going to be, and it hasn't left me stranded yet, but it is something that is in the back of my mind all the time, and that is the fuel range. I underestimated just how much fuel this bike is going to burn. I'm only getting about 45 at most 50 miles to the gallon, partly because I'm keeping it in a higher RPM range. I want throttle response. And then I've been spending a lot of time at 70, 75 miles per hour. That burns a lot of fuel as well. So I can get about 160 miles before it goes on to reserve. And at that point, I'm putting in about 3.2 to 3.4 gallons. So I think I have just about a gallon of reserve left. But I don't really like getting into that point. I don't like when the light flashes at me. And I do have one of those giant loop gas bags, and I had filled that up earlier because I just wasn't sure what the availability of fuel was going to be out here on the BDR, and then also riding a bunch of other back roads. So I know I can get a bigger tank. I don't want the bigger tank because it's black. I really like the blue look of the bike. So I think that's something I'm just going to have to tolerate is if I'm not sure what the gas situation is going to be, I'm going to have to carry extra fuel. Even on some of the other bikes that I've had, I've been able to get a little bit more range than I'm getting on this. So that to me is probably the ugliest part of this bike. There is one more really ugly thing with this bike that I didn't fully discover just how ugly it is until I got home from my trip. And it's something I knew about, and that is the rear linkage sticks below the level of the engine. So for skid plates, they have to have this little extra piece that protects the linkage. Now, I didn't do a lot of significant off-road riding, nothing that I considered to be challenging. There was some rocky conditions in the roads that I was riding. I didn't think it was anything that significant, but I picked up a rock at some point that hit that little bottom piece protecting the linkage, and it bent that into the linkage. So on my way home, the linkage would bottom out when the bike is fully extended on that piece, which that's a problem. Now, I will say that maybe part of the reason that I even hit that rock is because right now this bike is undersprung, and when I put stiffer springs in and I sit higher in the travel, something like that won't happen. But that is a significant issue with this bike. I knew about it going into it, and I thought, well, I don't ride that challenging of terrain. I'm not going through and smashing through rock gardens. I'm just cruising forest roads and cattle roads. I did not think this was going to be an issue. It clearly is. You'll see how this looks right now. I've got to do something different. I've been trying to bend it to get it to fit better. I still have some work to do, but it is a very significantly ugly thing about this bike, and it's a significant issue. If I didn't have that piece there, I likely would have broken my link. If it was enough to bend the protector, it may have broken the linkage. Bad issue. So that's my good, my bad, and the ugly parts of this bike. Now, I know some of you are thinking, well, what about the weight balance on this? This bike has been described as being top heavy. I haven't felt that. Now, I haven't been riding in really, really challenging conditions, but I have turned this bike around in all kinds of areas, sandy areas and very narrow areas, steep areas, and I've never really felt a weight balance that has concerned me that the bike was going to go over. I have done some things to lower the center of gravity with putting tools, probably 10 or 12 pounds of tools and tire repair and tubes, really, really low. And then my luggage is low. It's in front of the rear axle and it's tight to the bike. I think that has helped. I'm carrying winter camping gear in that big duffel on the back, and it's not light. And I really haven't felt an imbalance in this bike. It hasn't felt top heavy to me like a lot of people describe it. So maybe if I was riding in more challenging terrain, I would feel that. But out here in a lot of wide open country roads, this bike has been fantastic. And it has really changed my opinion of where I sit on this bike. Really, the only thing if I could change on this bike would be having tubeless tires, and the other would be cruise control. So those are my good, bad, and ugly part of this bike. I think this is probably now my go-to bike over anything else that I would ride. For now, I'm sure that'll change as different bikes come out. Maybe my opinion or the type of riding I'm doing will change, but that's where I'm at right now. So if you have ridden this bike, let me know what your good, bad, and ugly are in the description below. If you have not ridden this bike, but you keep hearing things, let me know what you think your good, bad, and ugly would be on this bike. And if you have not had a chance to ride this bike, I really recommend it. It may give you some perspective on the bike that you're riding and just something else to try. So if you haven't done it yet, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below. Thanks for watching. Get out, do some riding, ride safe, and I will see you out there. After riding this, I am going to buy one of these. I don't know when and I don't know how,